Hey everybody, this is Geneva of Geneva's Closet Talk Show. Please make sure you like and share this video and subscribe to Geneva's Closet if you haven't already done so right here on YouTube. And you can follow me on Facebook at Geneva's Closet. And you can email me at genevascloset22@gmail.com. Now, let's get into the news.
Elizabeth's claim to be Frankie's wife and heir was weakened by the fact that she was still legally married when she wed Frankie in 1964. Her divorce from Phillips was not finalized until 1965. Elizabeth's attorney argued in response that she and Frankie lived in Philadelphia and therefore established a common law marriage under Pennsylvania law. Frankie, by 1965, had pretty much been reduced to lip syncing at record hops on the East Coast. He decided to head to California in hopes that his old friend Zola Taylor could help him get some singing gigs in Los Angeles. Elizabeth testified that she did not object. He had always regarded Zola as his stage mother, she said. Spann wrote that Frankie's relationship with Zola was not entirely maternal. Zola had also been a teenage star. Her singing group, The Platters, had been even more successful than the Teenagers, and the group was sometimes referred to as the Four Platters. She and Frankie became teenage lovers in 1956 while they were on the Alan Freed bus tour. Zola testified that their affair continued off and on for several more years, according to Spann's story. Frankie moved into Zola's home and her bedroom. He then called Elizabeth and urged her to join him. He told Zola that the new guest was a friend from New York. Zola recalled. Frankie told Elizabeth that Zola and I aren't doing anything. It's just a motherly relationship, Elizabeth testified in court. Each woman suspected he was sleeping with the other, and both were apparently correct. When she and Frankie fought about it, Elizabeth told the court he pulled a gun on her and fled. The following month, Zola testified that she and Frankie drove to Tijuana and got married in a tiny chapel. The small wedding party celebrated by getting very drunk, not an uncommon state for Frankie at the time. Spann wrote that back in Los Angeles, the club where Zola was performing tossed the celebration with the cake and champagne. Unfortunately for Zola, she was unable to locate records documenting her Mexican wedding to Frankie or documentation of her Mexican divorce from her previous marriage, her second. Spann reported that Zola's secretary and her booking agent both testified that they were witnesses to the wedding and that her attorney argued that California law made her believed to be spouse entitled to share in Frankie Lymon's property. Maybe it was the afterglow from her Tijuana marriage that induced Zola to trust a junkie like Frankie to take care of her financial affairs when she left to tour Japan with the Platters in December 1965. She let him live in her hillside house with instructions to pay bills out of an allowance forwarded to him by her attorney. When she returned in April, the house was in foreclosure and Frankie was gone with the money. Zola never saw him alive again. I'd have to kill him. I was so angry, Zola told Spann, but I couldn't get my hands on him, couldn't find him. According to Elizabeth and several other witnesses, Frankie was back in New York telling them that his marriage to Zola had only been a publicity stunt. Couldn't even get the words out. Frankie had a very bad year in 1966. According to Paula Spann's story, he was arrested at least 3 times in New York for grand larceny or heroin possession. And the Selective Service, hungry for recruits as the war in Vietnam escalated, was after him. In lieu of sentencing, Frankie was allowed to undergo another rehab program after completing another rehab program and was inducted into the Army in December 1966. While serving at Fort Gordon in Georgia, Frankie married again. His bride was Amira Eagle, an elementary school teacher who lived with her family in nearby Augusta. According to Paula Spann, her sister's boyfriend introduced them, and soon after, Amira was cooking meals for Frankie, and they were shopping for wedding rings. They were married in June 1967 at the Beulah Grove Baptist Church, if I said that correctly, with 50 members of Amira's family in attendance and a reception afterwards at the Capri Lounge. Paula Spann reported that neither Zola nor Elizabeth could quite figure Amira Eagle Lyman, the 48-year-old third wife from Augusta, Georgia. Frankie marrying a school teacher? She's a square, Zola decided, noticing that Amira was coming to court in sneakers. Zola and Elizabeth didn't get close to Amira, and she didn't have anything much to say to them either during the 10 days they spent in court reliving the past. A lady working with Amira's attorney spoke with the reporter and said, Amira's Frankie Lyman is not this drunken bum. She did not know the druggie described in this trial. She knew a soldier. Frankie was interviewed by the Augusta Chronicle while he was stationed at Fort Gordon. While growing up in New York City, I never had much discipline, Lyman said. As a child star, however, I was subjected to discipline from agents, managers, and lawyers, but it was a discipline that protected me from myself, so to speak. Army discipline, I think, teaches a man how to protect himself. It teaches him responsibility and how to stand on his own 2 feet. It makes him not only a good soldier, but a better individual. I know it's been good for me. Span wrote that Frankie was a soldier for most of his brief marriage to Amira. He took the bus to the post from her family's home each day. He was a master manipulator, however, and it was just 2 months after his less than honorable discharge for repeatedly being AWOL that he went to New York, telling Amira that he wanted to see about reviving his career while also secretly planning to contact lady friends and drug pushers in the city. At the trial, Elizabeth testified that she saw Frankie on that visit, as she had a number of times both before and after his wedding to Amira, which she said she knew nothing of. Elizabeth went on to testify that she also saw Frankie the day before he took his last fatal dose of heroin. Amira came to New York to arrange for Frankie's funeral, mass, and burial, according to Span's reporting. Amira paid the $2,000 bill. A headstone was not part of the package, however, and Frankie Lyman was buried in an unnamed grave at St. Raymond's Cemetery. According to Paula Span, people sometimes compare Frankie with the young Michael Jackson, who also knew how to combine innocence and knowingness. It was painfully revealed in court testimony, however, that Frankie Lyman, for all his talent, was a bigamous, hustler, liar, and thief. Consequently, he left behind a tangled and miserable legal and financial mess, along with 3 wounded women. None of these 3 women in court, all of whom he deceived and betrayed, seemed willing to condemn him. He was honest, completely honest, Elizabeth insisted, up to a point. She said he didn't mean to hurt her and blamed his behavior on his addictions. Some drug users, they rob, they steal, and they do everything to sustain that habit. Frankie's particular scam, she believed, was getting married. I'm not a person to hold a grudge. I feel sorry for him, most of all, echoed Zola. She told Span that she never recovered financially from the loss of her home and still feels cheated. Yet, she also talked about Lyman's ruptured family and, again, his drug dependency. If you have any kind of heart at all, she said, you know that he went through hell. Parts of the above testimony and order of events were disputed in court. Amira's attorney argued that Elizabeth and Frankie separated in mid-1965 and never lived together as man and wife thereafter, invalidating her claim to be a common law marriage. They also pointed to the absence of documentation from Mexico as evidence that Zola and Frankie never married at all. Elizabeth's lawyer, on the other hand, maintained her marriage was valid, which meant that neither Zola nor Amira could have been. But the elephant in the room was the large sum of money that would be awarded to whoever was determined to be the songwriters of Why Do Fools Fall in Love? It was copyrighted in the names of Frankie Lyman and Morris Levy. Leon Borenstein, Levy's attorney, said that Levy assisted in the writing of the song. You have to remember, if he added 1 word, that's sufficient to justify co-authorship. Borenstein also said that Lyman, who was always pestering Levy for money, sold Levy the copyright to all his songs, and that Levy has a signed document to that effect. Remember, Frankie needed the money badly, Bornstein said. He had been busted in California again for drugs. The sum, he said, might have been $1,500. Why Do Fools Fall in Love was part of the American Greedy film, soundtrack, and album, a big pop hit single and album for Diana Ross in 1981, and had been used in a greeting card commercial. By the time of the trial, publishing rights to the song may have been worth 7 figures. The monetary figure was estimated by Chuck Rubin, a former agent who Paula Spann described as a kind of musical bounty hunter. She also wrote that he established his Artist Rights Enforcement Corp in 1981 to hound, bully, or sue record companies that he thought were depriving artists of their earnings while taking a substantial cut for his efforts. According to Spann, Rubin was not opposed to generating new income from old music. Sell, he advised. Just make sure the artist or writer gets his share. Spann wrote that Rubin gets his share too. Amira testified in surrogate court that her arrangement called for any money to be recovered through her suit would be shared 50-50 with Rubin after expenses and legal fees, which had already reached a substantial subtotal. The surrogate court judge hearing the widowhood case pushed for a settlement. Both Elizabeth and Zola's attorney said that Amira offered their clients 20% for Elizabeth and 5% for Zola of the estate. Zola and Elizabeth declined, but said they were willing to accept an equal 3-way split. Amira refused their counter offer. Paula Spann reported that during the trial, the judge even raised the disquieting possibility that none of his 3 supposed marriages were legally contracted, that Lyman had no widow. Spann revealed that if Elizabeth or Zola was found to be his widow, they agreed to share the proceeds of his estate equally. If Amira won, she would share the proceeds with Chuck Rubin and go after Morris Levy. If none of the women had found to be Frankie's widow, the surviving members of his family stood to inherit. And then get this, people, to make things even more complicated, Jimmy Merchant and Herman Santiago, the 2 surviving members of the original teenagers, filed their own federal suit against Levy and his companies, with Amira also named as a defendant. The pair claimed they wrote Why Do Fools Fall in Love with Frankie Lyman and asked for a declaration of rights to the copyright of the hit song. The only thing Morris Levy had to do with it was to collect the money, Santiago said. Before we get into some conspiracy theories, let me read to you just 2 articles that came out when Frankie Lyman passed away February 27th, 1968, and one of them says, singer 26 dies of drug overdose. Frankie Lyman, the rock and roll singer who made famous Why Do Fools Fall in Love, was found dead yesterday in the apartment of a friend, apparently of an overdose of narcotics, according to the police. And then it goes on to say some other things. But then we're going to get into the other article that says, cry final tears for Frankie Lyman. Thrice married, handsome Frankie Lyman, singer, songwriter, musician, and international celebrity at 13, commanding $5,000 a week, is dead at the age of 26. Well, first of all, I see a mistake right there, because he didn't even make it to 26 because he passed away in February. His birthday was in September. He would have been 26. He passed away at 25. But then anyway, it goes on to say, the entertainer who admitted that he romanced women at the age of 13 who were more than twice his age and smoked pot when he attended grammar school was found dead Tuesday morning on the bathroom floor of his grandmother's apartment at 470 West 165th Street. Well, the first article said a friend's house. This one says his grandmother's apartment. A needle used to administer heroin was nearby. The police at the West 153rd Street station said his death was probably caused by an overdose of drugs. Lyman, whose newest records, including I'm Sorry and Sea Breeze, are soon to be released, flew in Monday from Georgia, where he was stationed at Camp Gordon with the U.S. Army for a recording date, which his manager had arranged for him Tuesday afternoon. Grandmother in Queens, Lyman went back to the house where he spent a major portion of his boyhood days and spent the night with an Uncle Wallace Stribling because his grandmother, Mrs. Victoria Stribling, was visiting an ill relative in Queens. His aunt, Mrs. Mary Weston, who lives in the same building, said he appeared to be in the best of spirits and was looking forward to his recording date. His manager, Sam Bray, who literally picked him up out of the gutter a few years ago and made him enter New York Manhattan General Hospital for the cure, was shocked when he learned about Frankie's death. And then it goes on to say some other things, but we're going to stop there. Now, this is where the whole tee-hee-hee thing comes in with this whole Frankie Lyman thing. You just tell me what you think. And I am reading from TREMG, I don't know people, TREMG.info. And this was posted December 3rd, 2020 by D'Angelo Davis. Found this article pretty interesting. And it says, Frankie Lyman, was it murder? Then it goes on to say, of course, every article concerning Lyman's death says he died of a heroin overdose in February of 1968. This isn't one of those articles. In this one, we'll look at reasons why many believe he may have been a victim of foul play. Okay, now, it's well noted that Frankie Lyman struggled with drug addiction, but by 1968, he'd been clean for years and had started a new chapter in his life. He'd recently got married and for the most part lived a normal life in Augusta, Georgia. That is until his manager, Sam Bray, called him back to New York. Of course, people relapse every day, but there's more than a few red flags in this case. Let's take a look, shall we? Let's start with a statement from one of Frankie's ex-girlfriends, Antonia Figueroa. Says in a 1998 interview with Westword, she said the following: Frankie owed money to drug dealers who collected in blood. She then went on to say he was starting a new life. He had everything to live for. Why would he go back to drugs? Why? Frankie was murdered. I know that with all my heart. Elizabeth Waters, Lyman's first wife, revealed that she'd seen Frankie right before he died and he seemed happy. She also said that she's seen his lifeless body and there was a bruise on his forehead. Perhaps there was a struggle? All reports say that a needle was found beside Frankie's body and not in his arm. Also, there was no autopsy performed on his body. Daughter of one of the teenagers said that her father also believed Lyman was killed. At this point, you're probably saying, okay, maybe he was murdered. But why? During a low point in his life, Frankie sold the rights to his song, Why Do Fools Fall in Love, to his former manager, Morris Levy. In 1968, right before Frankie passed, Levy and Frankie's new manager, Sam Bray, were planning to release some of his earlier work along with new songs he recorded, including Sea Breeze and I'm Sorry. With Levy in full control of just about all of Frankie's older material and with Sam Bray in control of his new projects, is it possible that the two of them put something together to gain more money from Frankie's name? It's also been said that around the time of Frankie's death, he and the other members of the teenagers were getting ready to sue Morris Levy for unpaid royalties. It's well noted that Morris Levy was connected with the Mafia. Was it murder? Or did Frankie Lyman simply relapse when it seemed everything was finally going his way? And guess what, people? I found a part 2 of this article, and it goes on to say, in the previous article, I highlighted reasons why Frankie Lyman may have been murdered and who may have been involved. But here in part 2, we'll dive deeper and take a closer look at what could be one of the biggest cover-ups ever. And then it goes on to say, Morris Levy. Morris is listed first for obvious reasons, the main reason being his history with the mob. In the 2011 documentary, Jimmy Merchant, original member of Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers, revealed that he and the only other surviving member, Herman Santiago, once met with Levy in the 80s to talk about unpaid royalties. According to Merchant, Levy wasn't hearing it and dismissed them by intimidating them. Jimmy Merchant also said that he and Herman Santiago received threats following the meeting. They, much like everyone else, knew he had connections, and if that happened to them, then who knows what happened to Frankie Lyman, who was apparently talking with Levy about his unreleased songs and back royalties. Frankie, as an adult, knew more about the business than he did as a kid, so naturally he wanted to be paid for the work he'd done. In 1962, Frankie sold his rights to the song Why Do Fools Fall in Love to Morris Levy, but there were a handful of songs that he didn't sell his rights to but never received royalties for. Number 2, drug dealers. As mentioned in part 1, one of Frankie's ex-girlfriends said that he owed money to dealers who collected in blood. And if that's true, then that would explain why he fled New York and didn't want to go back. Frankie's wife, Elmira, said multiple times that he did not want to go back to New York when his manager called him. In 1968, Frankie himself told Jet magazine, "New York isn't a fun city to me anymore." This may sound strange coming from the mouth of a native New Yorker who has seen, done, and become hip to everything, but I feel comfortable and accepted there. Georgia, well, where he and Elmira lived together. Maybe he didn't feel comfortable in New York because he knew people were after him. In fact, just weeks after this interview, he was found dead. A few people from Frankie's neighborhood said that after his death, dealers would promote their product by saying, "My bag killed Frankie Lyman." Make of that what you will. Number 3, Sam Bray. Sam Bray was Lyman's last manager, and it seemed like he was the only person in the music industry who cared enough to revive his career. Bray's intentions seemed good and genuine, but maybe everything wasn't what it appeared to be. Frankie had been down and out for a while, and then entered Sam, who, for some unknown reason, decided to take a chance on him. Prior to pulling him out of the gutter, Sam Bray had never even met Frankie Lyman, so why did he do it, and where did he come from? Did he just do it out of the kindness, or was it a part of a dark plan? We know Frankie was no stranger to trouble, but it wasn't until he got involved with Sam Bray that he died. Look back at part 1 and you'll see that there was lots of money to be made off of Frankie Lyman's name, and Maurice Levy knew this, so it's possible that he sent Bray in to look like a savior to help set things up. When Lyman died, both Levy and Bray benefited from it financially. When an artist dies, their records seem to fly off the shelves, and in the case of Frankie Lyman, his music was used in both movies and commercials. His unreleased songs were also released sometime after his death. Songs from his teen years, which were under Maurice Levy Roulette label, and songs from his final days, which were under Sam Bray's Big Apple label. The only reason Frankie went back to New York is because Sam Bray promised him a new record deal and a chance to record new songs. How crazy is that? Frankie died soon after he signed the deal with Bray. Moving on. Death location. Where was Frankie Lyman's body found? It was first reported that he was found in a friend's apartment. It was later changed to him being found on his grandmother's bathroom floor. And it was even said that he was found outside in an alley. Here's a little extra tea. Frankie told his wife, Elmira, that after he left New York, he was going to Europe as a part of a review. He then told her that she could quit her job because he could take care of her. According to Elmira, this was the last conversation she had with her husband, and it took place on February 26, 1968, the day before he died. You can read more about this in the December 1998 issue of Ebony magazine, but back to what he told her. If Frankie was traveling to Europe and was going to make enough money to take care of his family, then he must have been promised a lot. Did Sam Bray promise him this as well to help lure him back to the Empire State? Every article says Lyman decided to celebrate his good fortune by taking heroin. The question here is, who said that? Did Frankie tell someone he was going to shoot up? How does anyone know this? It's an assumption, just like everyone assumed he overdosed because there was a needle found near his body. There was never an autopsy. Everyone knew Frankie struggled with addiction, so if someone killed him, wouldn't it make sense to place a needle next to his body? Let's close it out with a statement that may very well answer the question, was it murder? In 2019, when talking about Frankie Lyman's death, Antonia Figueroa said the following: Louis Lyman was a strong-hearted man and knew how to play his cards right by protecting himself. Seeing his brother being rolled out in a black paper bag, and he knew he would be next if he told the truth. Louis did the right thing by not telling the truth about how Frankie died. Yes, this is the same Antonia Figueroa who said Frankie owed money to drug dealers who collected in blood, and Frankie was murdered. I know this with all my heart. Guess what, everybody? They wrote a part 3 to this article, but I'm only going to read a little bit of it, the parts that I found interesting. And it says, as mentioned in part 2, Sam Bray was the reason Frankie Lyman went back to New York, even though he didn't want to go. In the December 15th, 1978 issue of Reader's Digest, Bray recalled Lyman's response when he asked him to come back. Sam, please don't ask me to come back to that jungle. This shows how much Frankie didn't want to go back, but after being promised a chance to record new songs and a tour in Europe, he finally agreed. In that same issue of Reader's Digest, Sam Bray said that once Frankie got to New York, they discussed a new song and a new soul sound. They then recorded the song, and according to him, Frankie loved it and was so excited to release it that he said, "I can't get over it. We picked a winner." Seeing how enthused he was, Sam said he pleaded with Frankie to keep clean, but a few hours later, he received a phone call from Howard Lymon's, Frankie Lymon's father, who said, "Our Frankie is dead." When talking about the day of Frankie's death, Bray said that from the time he and Frankie last spoke to the time he died, Frankie must have run into the devil himself. Keep in mind that Frankie had been clean for quite some time and had no reason to go back to drugs, especially then when he just gotten a new record deal and was ready to go out on the road again. Don't you remember Antonia, the lady who said that she know that Frankie did not die from no drugs and she knew that with all of her heart? Well, she said that she was Frankie's first love. She sure did. And this is an article coming from Westword.com, written September 10th, 1998, and it says, if she followed her heart instead of her mother's orders, Antonia Figueroa could have been famous. As it happened, though, she married Ernie from the old neighborhood, moved to Denver, and wound up packaging chicken thighs, T-bones, and hamburger meat at King Soopers. Now and then, whenever a certain song plays on the radio, she thinks about her brush with rock and roll history and what might have been. She's found herself thinking about it a lot more lately now that Why Do Fools Fall in Love, the movie about Frankie Lymon and his 3 wives, is showing all over town. Believe it or not, she says, and few people knows this, she was Frankie Lymon's best kept secret, his inspiration, his first inspiration. Then came the wives. Antonia, call me Tony, is a bubbly 56-year-old with dark twinkling eyes, pencil-thin eyebrows, puffy hairdo, and gold fingernail polish. She's from Brooklyn, a real New Yorker, has a twin sister named Dolores. I'm afraid I have another one like me, and speaks with an accent as thick as a slice of Sicilian-style pizza with everything on it. I see it this way, she says. If the Texans and the Southerners don't lose their accent, why should I? This haunts me. It really does. Frankie and I could have had more time with each other. Maybe it could have turned out different. Maybe I could have made him happy. I was his first love, the woman he could never have. Her story begins like this. It's New York City in 1955, the dawn of rock and roll. Tony's uncle, George Goldner, co-owns a number of record labels such as Rama, Chico, Roulette, and G. Although Goldner is known for publishing Latin acts like Tito Puente, he's also among the first to sign early black doo-wop singers. One afternoon, one such singer, Richard Barrett of the Valentines, brings Goldner a quintet of school friends from Harlem. The kids had gathered under Barrett's window and performed. They called themselves the Premiers, but Goldner is less impressed. They're just children, he says. I can't deal with schooling and everything like that. Barrett is persistent, though, and Goldner eventually gives them a chance. On the day of the Premiers are set to audition, Herman Santiago, the lead singer, develops laryngitis. So Tony recalls, George says to Little Frankie, can you sing the song? And Little Frankie says, yeah, I can sing the song. Okay, sing the song. So Little Frankie says, ooh, wah. And George and Richard say, he's the new lead singer. That night, Goldner returns home to his wife, Gracie, and skims the lyrics to Why Do Fools Fall in Love. He reads them a few times and says, forget about it, then tosses the paper in the trash. But Gracie, who has her own nose for talent, fishes the paper from the wastebasket. Now, wait a minute. Let me see here. Hey, this is a hit. Get these boys into the studio and record them. You think so? Yeah, go for it. So Goldner gets the boys in the studio and record them. The Premiers had become Frankie Lymon and the Teenagers. And Why Do You Fall in Love hits #1 on the R&B charts, #6 on the pop charts, and #1 in England. The Teenagers, dressed in leather sweaters, creased pants, and loafers, score 4 top 20 R&B songs with their debut album. Then Tony says, I get a call from my uncle and he says, come on down here. I got a group I'd like you to meet. They're called Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers and they need a fan club. I want you to be the president. You want me to be the president? Yeah, come on down here. So Tony goes on down to Goldner's fancy apartment where her uncle introduces her to the guys. Guys, I'd like you to meet my niece. She's going to be the president of your fan club. Hi, how are you? I'm fine, thanks. Tony sits with the guys and over Coke and ice cream and gets to know Frankie. He's 14 and I'm 13. And from the first time we see each other, we just get this feeling, she says. You know, this wonderful feeling. What you call it? Vibes? Frankie is a friendly and polite, always joking and kind of cocky with a button nose, $1 million smile, and choir boy soprano. I mean, anyone could fall in love with him, Tony recalls. He just had this thing. It sent girls gaga. Tony and Frankie began to date. Tony twin sister, Dolores, the fan club vice president, dates teenager Joe Negroni. And Tony's best friend Lorraine dates teenager second tenor Jimmy Merchant. We never double dated or anything, but it was all right, Tony says. Tony and Frankie sit in her living room autographing photos. She stands backstage like a little princess during his appearance at the Paramount. She combs his hair with white pomade to keep it wavy. She sits in the studio while he sings I Promise to Remember to her. One night during the show at the Apollo, Frankie asks Tony and Aunt Gracie where they're sitting. In the balcony, Tony replies, why? Then he comes on stage and begins to sing Please Be Mine, Tony recalls. I'll never forget that. He turns to me, practically on his knees, and starts singing. My aunt pokes me. He's singing to you. He's singing to you. And all of a sudden, people downstairs in the audience, the entire audience turns around and looks at me. Who is he singing to? The whole audience just gives their attention to me. Frankie asks Tony to accompany him on a London tour, but her mother says, no, you're too young. There are too many men. You have to go to school. So instead, Frankie sends her love letters and even an insurance policy with her name on it. At the end of each correspondence, Frankie writes, you're not just a girl. You're my girl. Then he proposes. My mother read the letter, Tony remembers, and said, I'm not sure I should say this. No, I forbid it. We're Puerto Rican. We're dark enough in this family already. Nope, that's enough of this. You're going to your aunt's house in New Jersey. Oh, I cried my heart out because Frankie and I lost contact. After a year or two, Tony returns to Brooklyn. Frankie has left the group and the teenagers have hired a string of replacement singers, but neither act reclaims the spotlight. Frankie's voice changes with puberty, record deals are harder to come by, and the rumors begin. My aunt and uncle says to me, no more Frankie Lyman, Tony recalls. He's on drugs now. He's on heroin. You can't see him anymore. Tony feels sorry for him. His dad is an alcoholic. His mother is dying from cancer. His career is plummeting. One night, Tony's aunt and uncle asked her to babysit at the estate that the teenagers helped buy. Before they leave, they give strict instructions. Don't call Frankie Lyman. You hear me? Stay away from him. So what does Tony do? I call Frankie Lyman, she says. He was so happy to hear from me. He says, where are you? I want to see you. I want to see you. Oh, he stole my heart. Tony sends her uncle's chauffeur to Harlem and fetches 17-year-old Frankie. He comes running to me, hugging me and kissing me. Oh, the whole 9 yards. They walk around the estate. Frankie holds her hand, lifts her onto a swing and kisses her. Oh, it was beautiful, Tony recalls. The stars, the moon, the crickets, the whole romantic thing. He told me he loved me. Come with me. I want to be with you. I need to be with you. But Tony doesn't answer. She remembers what Aunt Gracie and Uncle George say about drugs. Frankie stays a few hours, plays with the kids upstairs, then leaves. He was very quiet, Tony recalls. He kissed me a very long time and said he loved me, and when he left, he had a very sad face. The next morning, Tony's uncle showers, dresses for the day, and discovers items are missing from the master bedroom. Honey, have you seen my ring? It's in the dresser drawer. Are you sure? There's nothing up here. I can't find my jewelry anywhere. Tony, Goldner bellows, did you have Frankie Lyman here? Oh, I started crying, Tony recalls. Yes, I had him here last night. Didn't I tell you he's a drug addict? You know what he did? He stole our jewelry so he could hawk it for drugs. Goldner calls Frankie and demands the jury back. I'll blackball you from the record industry. You hear me? Tony calls Frankie and sobs into the phone. How could you do this? What's the matter with you? You said you loved me. My uncle was right. You're a drug addict. I hate you. I hate you. Don't say that. We love each other. I want to be with you. I want to marry you. I didn't mean to hurt you. I'm sorry, Frankie tells Tony. But it's too late. Tony hangs up on him, and her family makes sure she never sees him again. I stay in the neighborhood for a few years and get married, she says. I didn't want to, but this fella from the neighborhood, Ernie, was in love with me. I wanted to forget Frankie. What did I know? I was only 18. I thought marriage would solve everything. Yet her heart still belongs to Frankie, and Ernie knows it. He takes her love letters, Frankie marriage proposal, and all their photos together, piles them in the bathtub, and lights them on fire. You're my wife now, Ernie says. No more Frankie Lyman. Tony followed Frankie's career anyway. He marries 3 women, Elizabeth Waters, Zola Taylor, and Amira Eagle. The women were unaware of Lyman's simultaneously marriages, later sue each other for his estate back royalties. Frankie joins the army, battles addiction, and tries to revive his career. At age 25, he returns to New York to launch a comeback, but after a few days in his old neighborhood on February 28, 1968, Frankie Lyman dies from a heroin overdose. I was living in New Jersey, Tony said. I was in the kitchen. It was morning. I picked up the paper and I see Frankie Lyman was found dead in his grandmother's bathroom. I got very quiet. I held everything in. It hurt terrible, but I held it in. I cried for myself. A few days later, Aunt Gracie asks if she's attending the funeral. My husband had a fit, she recalls. He says, are you still in love with Frankie Lyman? Well, you're not going. I forbid it. You're not going. I still never forgave him for that. At her apartment table in Denver, Tony shuffles her remaining memorabilia. She doesn't believe Frankie's death was accidental. Frankie owed money to drug dealers who collected in blood. He was starting a new life, she says. He had everything to live for. Why would he get back on drugs? Why? Frankie was murdered. I know that with all my heart. Looking back on things, Tony believes it was probably best she never marry Frankie. I was innocent, and I was young, and I loved him, she says. He was very persuasive. I could have gotten to drugs. I could have been devastated with everything he put his wives through. Could you imagine? But who knows? He cared for me in the beginning. I was his first love. Maybe I could have helped him. Every so often, Tony sees Louis Lyman, Frankie's brother, and the surviving members of the teenager, Herman Santiago and Jimmy Merchant. They go out to dinner, have a few laughs, and talk about the old days. She hands me some faded snapshots of them together as proof of her story. Sometimes it bothers her that the name Antonia Figueroa never appears in Frankie Lyman's biographies, rock and roll, or movies, so she made her own video documentary, I Promise to Remember. She was there, Tony says, with Uncle George and Aunt Gracie and little Frankie. Frankie broke my heart, she says, but I forgive him. I was his first love and his first inspiration. It's in the past now, but it still sticks to me. It was a very happy time in my life, and I live with it today. I told Frankie I would never forget him. And I won't. The ruling on Frankie Lyman's court case concerning his 3 wives is as follows. This is coming from the Washington Post, dated for November 2nd, 1988, and it says, ruling in Lyman's case. The court found that the descendant, Anne Elizabeth Waters, has satisfied the requirements of common law marriage in the state of Pennsylvania. Though Waters was not yet divorced from her first husband when she and Frankie Lyman married in the civil ceremony in Alexandria in 1964, their union became valid when that divorce became final in 1965, the judge found. The opinion dismisses the claims of Taylor, who was unable to produce credible proof of her marriage to Lyman or her divorce from her previous husband, both of which she said occurred in Mexico. Taylor's attorney could not be reached for comment. Lyman's 1967 marriage to Eagle, marked by a ceremony at the Beulah Grove Baptist Church, was invalid, according to the opinion, because he was still married to Waters. Whatever happened to Frankie Lymon's 3 wives? Well, let's get into it. Zola Mae Taylor, born March 17, 1938 in Los Angeles, California, and died April 30th, 2007 in Los Angeles, California, was an American singer. She was the original female member of the Platters from 1954 to 1962, when the group produced most of their popular singles. She was also the second of Frankie Lymon's 3 wives. Zola Taylor appeared with the Platters in the first rock and roll film, Rock Around the Clock. In 1990, Taylor was elected to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a member of the Platters. Zola Taylor died in Riverside, California at the age of 69 from pneumonia following a series of strokes. She was portrayed by Halle Berry in the 1998 film, Why Do Fools Fall in Love? Amira Eagle Lyon Bryant, the legally declared widow of Frankie Lymon, died Saturday, April 13th, 2019 at AU Medical Center in Augusta, Georgia. Leela Rashan portrayed Bryant, who married Lyman on June 30th, 1967 at Beulah Grove Baptist Church near Payne College when Lyman was stationed that year at Fort Gordon. In December 1989, the New York Supreme Court ruled that Bryant was Lyman's only legal wife. The retired Richmond County school teacher in her years after Lyman was married to Augustine Leroy Bryant, if I'm saying that correctly. Lyman in February 1967 talked about his life and show business career with a Chronicle reporter. He then was a private in the Army, taking basic training at Fort Gordon and assigned to Company D, 16th Battalion, 2nd Training Brigade. Lyman related that he started singing publicly with his 3 brothers in a choral group at Gospel Church in New York City. That eventually led to singing on street corners with friends and being discovered at age 12. 10 years after his initial success, however, he was wearing an Army uniform as a private at Fort Gordon. His widow in 2013 said she was lucky to know and love Lyman at a good time in his life when he was happy being in the Army and still had hopes for the future. I'm sure it probably would bring back some good memories, she said, of the show that was being staged at the Imperial. I call Frankie at a good time in his life. I often tell people that Frankie didn't end up living a glorified life. His, in the end, was a wasted life ruined by drugs. He was used and misused, and he used others also. His was a wasted life, and he was so talented. Elizabeth Waters Phillips, because we know that her first husband was that guy, Charles Phillips. Lyman was born about 1943, and Vivica Fox played her in Why Do Fools Fall in Love, and we do know that she married Frankie Lyman January 23rd, 1964, when she was 21 years old in Alexandria, Virginia. Besides that, I didn't find too much more information on her, and I definitely did not find anything that said that she's not living. So there's a huge possibility that Miss Elizabeth could still be alive, but do not quote me on that. I'm reading from sfgate.com, dated for February 2012, and this speaks about the movie, and it says, the way 50 singer Frankie Lyman is presented in Why Do Fools Fall in Love is mostly true. We play down certain things and fudge others to make it work as a film, said director Gregory Nava, whatever, about the $25 million biopic that opened last weekend. What isn't clear in the movie was just how young Lyman, a mere 13, when he broke ground with the doo-wop classic Why Do Fools Fall in Love, was when he was 3-timing these women. We had to fudge a little on the age situation that might have construed as a problem by audiences. In the film, Lorenz Tate, who is 25, is portrayed as a mature-looking teenager far from 13 in appearance and demeanor. It's only at the end that viewers get a glimpse of the real Lyman in black and white concert footage. It's obvious he's just a boy. At 13, the pint-sized Lyman and his singing group, the Teenagers, got a record contract, but they turned out out to be a flash in the pan that had tanked by the 1960s because of division in the group and Lymon's drug addiction. There wasn't much interest in making a film about Lymon that was going to be just another biopic about a promising musician who burns out on drugs. It wasn't until the court case involving his wives cropped up that the film's producers got interested. Vivica Fox has been singled out for her performance as Lymon's second wife, a petty thief who turned to prostitution to help Lymon finance his drug habit. "I'm gratified people like my performance," she said, "because I worked my rear end off to get it right. Part of the work was putting on all that makeup so all the wives looked 30 years older for the court scenes. It took 3 hours just for the makeup and hair." Everyone connected with the film, including Warner Brothers, was disappointed that the movie didn't fare better in its opening weekend. It grossed a meager $3.9 million, putting it in 5th place. Did you know that Frankie Lymon had brothers that were singers too? Well, if you didn't know, you're going to learn today. Now check this out. This is coming from NewYorkDailyNews.com, dated for July 2013, and it says, Louis Lymon of the Teen Chords, dead at 69. Louis Lymon, the last surviving brother from a groundbreaking Harlem family of 1950 teen singers that included the late Frankie Lymon, died Tuesday at his home in Las Vegas. He was 69. He had been suffering from prostate cancer, though he continued to perform until early this year. Louis never achieved the commercial success of Frankie, whose group, the Teenagers, popularized the 1950 rock and roll sound with Why Do Fools Fall in Love. But Louis and his group, the Teen Chords, cut a series of records that are also regarded as gems of the 1950 New York rhythm and blues vocal group sound. These included the ballad, Please Tell the Angels, and a lot of infectious up-tempo tunes, including Not Too Young to Fall in Love, Honey, Honey, Tell Me Love, Lydia, and I'm So Happy, which was re-recorded in 1961 by the Duquesnes under a young record producer named Phil Spector. The Teen Chords also sang in the 1957 movie Jamboree, which featured Fats Domino and Jerry Lee Lewis. Louis Lymon had the same powerful voice as Frankie, who was 2 years older, though Louis always volunteered in interviews that he didn't have Frankie's natural exuberance on stage. Jimmy Merchant, who sang with Frankie in the original Teenagers and later sang with Louis in several groups, said after Louis' death Tuesday that Louis was being modest. His singing and stage skills, as with Frankie, were a true gift from God, said Merchant. While Louis often fell into the shadows of Frankie's Teenagers, he said in the late 1980s interview that he never resented his brother's popularity. "I was proud of what Frankie did," he said. "He helped pave the way for a lot of the rest of us." Louis' Teen Chords were signed by Harlem record producer and store owner Bobby Robinson soon after the Teenagers became popular. They auditioned by signing a teenager song. The Teen Chords' last recording for Robinson, I Found Out Why, was a belated answer record to Why Do Fools Fall in Love. The Lymon brothers grew up in a musical Harlem household where their father, Howard Sr., worked in a flower shop and sang with a gospel group called the Harlemaires. Howard, Frankie, and Louis all sat in with the Harlemaires early in their lives. For all their musical success, the brothers' lives were often star-crossed. Howard, the oldest, and Timothy, the youngest, died several years ago. Frankie died in 1968, overdosing on heroin while on weekend leave from the Army. Louis kept singing throughout his life, though it didn't always provide a living. He sang on and off with the Merchant and original teenager Herman Santiago in the legendary Teenagers from the 1980s into the new millennium, and brought a new Teen Chords group together for a few recordings. He also sang with the Drifters and Coasters group, which Merchant said demonstrated his versatility, singing, and showmanship. He lived in New York most of his life before joining the cluster of R&B artists who have settled in or near Las Vegas. "We take our hats off," said Merchant, "to the one and only Louis Lymon." Well, I'm done, people, and I'm tired. I think I done told you everything there is to know about Frankie Lyman from the rooter to the tutor. We done talked about what happened to him, his exes, what did they end up getting with the court case, the movie, his family, a little bit of information that we were able to get from the articles about that, conspiracy theories, his boo thing, what people thought about him, what happened with his career, the real ages of everybody, people birthdays that I can figure out. Like, I don't know what else there is to say, but I do know that this is a sad story from beginning to end. It was a short-lived life. He was very talented, but we all know that something had to have been going on with his background, with his family. That's why I went to read the articles, find out a little bit about him. But yeah, it is sad. But overall, I just want to know what you think.
Here is a brief historical visit with Frankie Lyman. It took place in September of 1957, backstage at Vancouver's Georgia Auditorium.
Well, downstage now here at the Georgia Auditorium is Frankie Lyman. You go on pretty soon, don't you, Frankie?
Yes, I do.
Is this your first time in the Pacific Northwest?
Yes, it is.
Where do you hail from? Where's your real home?
New York.
Right in New York City?
Mm-hmm.
Who gave you your first big break?
The people at G.
At G Records?
Yes.
Have you got a new release coming out, Frankie?
It is already out.
What's it called?
Released. My Girl.
My Girl. Oh, yeah, we've got that in our top 50. But, I mean, I thought you had a new one after that one coming out.
No.
You're not with the group in the background anymore. Do you want to talk
No.
about it or you want to eliminate it?
Well, it's not necessary.
What happened with the group? Did they just leave on their own?
No, they want to go as a quartet instead of a quintet. They figured they might make it better by themselves. So.
I see. Well, how do you like being in the entertainment world? How old are you, by the way, Frank?
16.
You're 16 years old? Well, you're getting there, man. How do you like the show business?
It's fine. Just fine.
How's Alan Freed and these fellas? They been good to you down there?
I don't know.
You never met
seen
him? Never met
Alan
Alan Freed?
lately. No. Yeah, I know him, but I haven't seen him lately.
Oh, I see. What was the last movie you did?
Mr. Rock and Roll.
Mr. Rock and Roll, which is currently playing here in Vancouver at the Strand Theater. You can see Frankie Lyman there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those are pictures taken with Elvis when he was here, by the way.
Yeah.
Well, where do you head from here? Do you go back home?
No, we go to Seattle. The tour it's lasted for until November the 24th. Then we go home.
Then you go home. I guess you can't wait to get home. How many members in the family?
Oh,
In your own family?
about 5.
5 people.
Yeah.
Right? Is that including your mom and dad? Eh?
Yeah.
You got 2 little brothers, or is it sisters, or what?
No, I have 2 little brothers and 1 older brother.
And are you the oldest one in the family?
No, I'm next to the oldest.
Next to the oldest.
Yeah, there's 6 altogether, I should say.
Oh. Do you like this kind of music you're singing?
Well, it's nice.
You like it, eh?
Yeah.
What's your favorite song of all the songs you recorded?
My Girl.
My Girl. It's your favorite? That's the one we've got right now on the charts, and well, we'd like to thank you for talking to us backstage.
And I want to thank you very much.
Okay.
Why do fools fall in love? Well, you're kind of young to be in the book. Well, now, how does a young man like you find all this time to go on? I beg your pardon? Yeah.
Well, it's done by correspondence.
Oh, you do by correspondence. I see. Oh, you're great, incident. Just kidding.
My girl, ooh, my girl, it's a genuine cutie, my girl.
I will rely sometime. Oh, girl, I got to be with you to change your name to mine.
I would like to know how you all feel about this situation, and while you are letting me know, could you please like and share this video and subscribe to Geneva's Closet if you haven't already done so right here on YouTube. And you can follow me on Facebook at Geneva's Closet, and you can email me at genevascloset22@gmail.com. You all have a fabulous day, and I will talk to you later. Bye.